Well, joining us at our table now is author Yossef Bodansky. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us once again. Welcome
Pleasure.
back. Wanted to have you on. You've written a lot, of course, about the Middle East and about Osama bin Laden and al-Qaida. Wanted to ask, is there a direct link between Saddam Hussein and al-Qaida in your view?
Yes. Yes, and that's something that I've covered both in my previous book, Bin Laden, that came out in '99, and more up-to-date in the current book, that The High Cost of Peace. The relationship between Iraqi military intelligence, the guys who do business, and the Islamist terrorist movement from which Bin Laden grew up and eventually took over, goes back to 1992-93. The fighting in southern Sudan against the rebel, and then the preparation of the elite forces that eventually confronted the United States in Mogadishu. The relationship has evolved. If to jump, and I'm really encapsulating, by 1998, in the aftermath of the U.S. attacks on Iraq in February, relationship improved tremendously because the Islamists realized that Saddam Hussein was willing to provide them with training that other people would not, as well as for jumping point into crossing into Saudi Arabia. Saddam Hussein realized that the Islamists were willing to die and kill for him without him being implicated. This is a love-hate relationship. The Islamists initially never accepted Saddam Hussein's ideology. They called him an apostate, a kafir, that they object to his secularity, but they realize that they can do business together and against a common enemy, and it's working. Saddam Hussein has since provided them with weapons of mass destruction technology, advanced training that nobody else did, a lot of logistical support, communication support worldwide, bases to search from, transfer point to Syria and to Lebanon when they're coming from Afghanistan, and more recently, again, advanced training that others do not have. Bin Laden, and in November 2001, when our attack on Afghanistan was picking up pace, Saddam Hussein sent emissaries to Bin Laden to offer him shelter and shield in case he decides to leave Afghanistan.
Yossef Bodansky is author of several books, including this one, his latest. It's called The High Cost of Peace, How Washington's Middle East Policy Left America Vulnerable to Terrorism. What's your basic thesis here? How did Washington's policy leave the country open to terrorism?
We've never understood the Muslim world. We fight our wars, make our peaces, approach our crisis in English, American logic. Middle East is running essentially in Arabic, Muslim logic. Political framework, political dynamics, priorities, issues of families, issue of Islam as a religion, as a way of life, as a civilization. We don't take it into consideration. As a result of it, the story of our relationship with the Arab Middle East is that of mutual alienation, growing tension, mistrust, and reaching to the point that everybody, and that includes Saddam Hussein, is finding shield and shelter in the Islamist confrontation with the West. Saddam Hussein today speaks like Bin Laden. They're using the same Quranic verses to explain why there's no other option but to confront the United States. And this is it. We're succeeding to alienate people that we could coexist with.
Take your phone calls in just a moment for Yossef Bodansky. 3 lines here for Democrats. 202-585-3881 is your line. For Republicans, it's 202-585-3880. And everyone else, 202-585-3882. We're talking about Saddam Hussein and al-Qaida and exploring with Yossef Bodansky whether there is a specific link between the two. Mr. Bodansky, this came out on Friday based on Thursday's events. Rumsfeld links al-Qaida to Saddam. There was the headline there from the Washington Times. There is this op-ed piece, though, in the New York Times today. It's by Daniel Benjamin, who served on the National Security Council from 94 to 99, has authored a book as well. He says that Saddam Hussein and al-Qaida are not allies. They are not obvious allies, Mr. Benjamin writes. In fact, they are natural enemies. A central tenet of al-Qaeda's jihadist theology is that secular Muslim rulers and their regimes have oppressed the believers and plunged Islam into a historic crisis. Hence, a paramount goal of Islamist revolutionaries for almost half a century has been the destruction of the regimes of such leaders as Presidents Nasser, Sadat, Mubarak, Assad, and the military government in Algeria, and even the Saudi royal family. So at least Daniel Benjamin says they're not allies. There's not a great link there.
There's no love affair. But there's a tremendous difference between the Islamist attitude towards Gamal Abdel Nasser and Nasserism, the search for revolutionary pan-Arabism, and contemporary Saddam Hussein. And it is the extent of the threat of the West. Globalization, the information technology, the whole assault into the heart by alien and what the Muslims perceive hostile values, the Islamists, perceive hostile values into the heart of Islam, pushes strange bedfellows together to confront a common enemy. And if there is a movement on Saddam Hussein, and as I said, back in 1998 when the relationship started, some of the luminaries around bin Laden were very hostile to Saddam Hussein, but they said, we are together in the same trenches against a common enemy, the United States. However, Saddam Hussein, far more than bin Laden, realized the power of the Islamists. And in recent speeches, particularly the revolution, the June 2002, yeah, the latest, July 2002, the latest Revolutionary Day speech, Saddam Hussein sounded just like bin Laden. Bari al-Atwan, the editor of Al-Quds al-Arabi, confidant of bin Laden, wrote an excellent analysis and later discussed it on Al Jazeera of that speech. And he said Saddam Hussein did not sound like Saddam Hussein. He sounded like the Mujahid Saddam Hussein. The Sheikh Saddam Hussein used the same language as bin Laden, the same approach to Quranic verses, the same interpretation. He's sliding into the fold of the Islamists and they're exploiting it.
Let's get to the phones for Yossef Bodansky. We're talking about Saddam Hussein and al-Qaida.
But for some reason, this has been going on for centuries. Intelligent people should be able to figure it out after a couple of centuries. My gosh.
Thanks, Mr. Bodansky.
I'm afraid that what we can hope in the Middle East and largely can achieve is coexistence between Arab and Jews, and for that matter between the West and the Muslim world. The problem is there'll have to be a very thorough redrawing of the map in the Middle East. We'll have to accept the fact that Muslims want to live their life in accordance with the tenets of Islam as a political movement, not just as a civilization, not just a religion. And Israeli Jews and other non-Muslim minorities have right to exist in their own states or their own communities without interference, without the burden of Islam overruling them. The moment we realize that, I think there is a chance. However, that takes major redrawing, as I say, of the map, some daring initiatives. I don't know if the current political leadership throughout the West, not just Washington, is eager and willing to undertake that kind of drastic initiative. Perhaps it will take another major crisis, another major eruption to tell us that we don't have any other choice.
Final thought from Yossef Bodansky. Where is all this going? And more precisely, if the U.S. attacks Iraq, what happens after that?
First, question is under what circumstances do we attack Iraq? Number two, under what's going to happen with the alliance of Iran, Iraq, and Syria? What's going to happen with Pakistan, which is a very unstable country, and still hasn't decided whether they are with us or against us. I think they are increasingly convinced that they are against us, although politically we fail to acknowledge that. Then there's the Islamist movement. These are all interconnected, intertwined dynamics. We cannot just separate and isolate Iraq and say, okay, put it in a vacuum and say, okay, this is a country that size, that many oil reserves, very nasty leader, and we're going to ignore everything else and concentrate on that. All depends how all of these players are going to play up to the moment before the first bomb falls on Iraq.
Yossef Bodansky, we thank you for your time once again. He's author of this book, just out, The High Cost of Peace, How Washington's Middle East Policy Left America Vulnerable to Terrorism. Thanks a lot for your time again.
Pleasure.